Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Moon Knight Day. I'm Eric. Kim is with me. And we're going to talk about episode 5 of Moon Knight called Asylum. It is set in an asylum. That is a spoiler I'll say up front, but partially set. But full spoilers follow. So if you haven't watched it yet, here's your warning. You're about to be spoiled on it. 3, 2, 1. You still with us? Full spoilers. All right. I should say for Kim and I, this was going to be an interesting episode because we got the first 4. The press were sent the first 4 together. So we both watched several weeks ago, 4 in a row. I don't know if you watched them literally 4 in a row, Kim. But this was going to be our first one in a while. And we'd have a different perspective on it. So what did you think of episode 5 of Moon Knight?
Like the rest of this series, I've loved it. And I think, it's getting better now with each episode. I think this maybe even tops the last one, but this is a really assured episode. It gives us practically no Moon Knight again, but I think we should all be really okay with that because this gave us some laughs, a lot of tears, and we got some answers to some of the questions that the show has raised, and we got a bit of tense action too, which I thought was very Pirates of the Caribbean aboard that ship, in the realm of the untethered souls. And we got Mark and Stephen's absolutely heart-rending backstory that was a bit like Peacemaker.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think going into this episode, one might expect an episode that was kind of being marketed around a lovable talking hippo to be the one to make everyone cry. Some people made a comparison to WandaVision, which also had a very sad penultimate episode that really dug into the main characters' like trauma and backstory. And they did it again here, and I think very successfully. I can understand some complaints about this show maybe not being what people want it to be. Look, there's not a lot of Moon Knight in Moon Knight. That is true. But in these 2 episodes, we only got one little flashback glimpse of the costume. But what an amazing show this is for Oscar Isaac. Not that we didn't know he was a great actor, but I think watching this episode, like halfway through, I kind of stopped even thinking about the fact that I was watching a special effect for the 2 of them to be on screen together, and was just totally engaged with them as 2 characters and their dynamic as brothers, like what their relationship was like. What did you think of, like, this was really the first time that they really got to be this immersed in the double Oscar of it all?
The brilliance of it is almost in the fact that they're the same character but they're 2 separate characters, and when Stephen is learning Mark's backstory for this at the same time he's kind of sad for Mark but also discovering his own trauma too, and he acts it so well. It comes across really, really well. And I did want to say as well, Ethan Hawke shouldn't be overlooked. He was brilliant in this episode too, but he's kind of overshadowed by the tour de force acting from Oscar Isaac. But I thought he was really creepy again, as Dr. Harrow with his little tash.
Yes, called out for his Ned Flanders look.
Ned Flanders, and like this really complex villain character who is kind of presenting as this well-meaning hero in his eyes, but he's also, let's not forget, admitted to how much he's enjoyed causing pain and suffering and enjoying the act of killing itself.
Yeah, I agree that Hawk's doing a great job, and we should talk about how we definitely got an explanation for where we were this episode, right? We spoke last week about how there was no chance this was going to actually be like, it was all in your mind because the entire MCU was not going to be in Mark Spector's mind. But the answer was, this is the afterlife, that they had died. Because it's 2 guys in one body when Harrow shot them. So the Harrow we're seeing here on one hand is not the real guy, but he's still operating in this, the way that they would see him, I guess. And I thought he was great too, especially when it's like, it's interesting. We'll talk in a second about kind of getting to the root of Mark and Steven's issues, but there's an interesting scene when Dr. Harrow, is suggesting that maybe Steven was either Steven was created by Mark just to sort of to hide the terrible actions Mark does, which is Mark is a murderer. He's killed all these people. So he created Steven because he didn't want to deal with that. Or he suggests Steven is the real personality. And Mark was created to punish the world for what his mom did to him, which is leaning towards the truth, but still not the truth. And I thought that Hawk played this really well, as far as like even the stuff where he was like, we don't give people shots without permission, except for sometimes when we do, you know.
Yeah.
those little sides. But let's talk about the sadness here, because on one hand, when we find out his brother died, and his mom blames it on him, I will admit for a second I thought of Walk Hard and the wrong kid died, because it's where you go. But then it got real heavy, because it wasn't, I mean, not that it would not be a lot on its own if she blamed him for his brother's death and was terrible to him, but she also was physically beating him, it turns out. And pretty much a monster person. And I thought, while this wasn't going to be, I respect this show because it is doing its own very standalone story. And so the big revelation here is not going to be, connected to something from Doctor Strange or something from Captain America the Winter Soldier, but it's just like his mom beat him and he didn't want to face that. What did you think of sort of what we really learned here about his past?
Yeah, it was unexpected for me. I didn't, and it's different from the comic books, the explanation of where his trauma came from. I guess there's an element of, it's switched to the mum being the one that's particularly affected by the loss of her child, more so than the dad, let's say, and is going down that kind of losing it route, which bothered me slightly. But yes, she was great, the actress, and that these scenes were great. These birthday parties he had with his dad on his own. How heartbreaking was that,
Oh my gosh, right? So sad. Yeah, it's interesting this changes because it's like they look, they clearly know the comic books. There's people pointing out there's direct nods to even in the decoration in Mark's childhood bedroom to the comics and some of the clothing he wears, but it's all very different as far as like his brother doesn't die, his brother grows up and becomes a villain. And all these very different. I don't even know if his mom is ever an important character. I'm trying to remember. It's much more the dad who gets the focus, not as an abusive dad, but sort of what his history is. But I thought it all worked for me. First of all, I'll say we have our first Jewish MCU hero, so thank you for the representation, MCU. It is different. It bothers some people. It's always going to bother people how much they change her. I understand, but it's like, his dad, I don't know if he's a rabbi. They don't say whether he is or he isn't. The dad's origin is complicated in the comics by the passage of time, because it's directly connected to him like fleeing Nazis, like in Germany type Nazis. And it's like, well, the ages don't even really work for the comics, and they kind of ignore that these days, which happens more and more. But I don't know. I thought this was all very effective. These snippets we got of all this.
I think that the creators were very interested in portraying the condition, dissociative identity disorder, accurately, I think. And I imagine that they've delved into what kind of trauma in the past causes this kind of condition. And it all felt very thought out and very convincing.
I agree. Just saying that he had a very specific thing, trying to, the ultimate answer being that his mom abusing him made him retreat into this other identity. Stephen, I think we've mentioned before, the comic books constantly retconned him. And there was even back and forth in the comics whether he had DID before Konchu came to him or Konchu caused it. But I think ultimately where even the comics have landed, everyone's landed, is it feels a little insulting to be like, oh, this like real life disorder came from this like magical, god being, and to instead say this is a story about a guy who had this condition thanks to something that was very real world that had nothing to do with like the MCU of it all. It's just he happened to later meet an Egyptian god of vengeance, so.
Who manipulated him and took advantage, as Stephen points out in this episode, took advantage of him and his state to become his avatar.
Yeah, completely. It actually is funny in the comic books, in Marvel comic books, the Hulk's origin is a little similar in that they ultimately decided to reveal that he was abused by his dad, which caused like a rageful personality that was always underneath, and that like the Hulk is the physical version of, but that was always there. And the way they weren't allowed to do Hulk movies, it says like we never got into that, so I'm totally fine with them almost using a similar idea here for Moon Knight, because I think it was very, very effective. Well, let's talk about we talked about how this episode, last week's episode ended, and this one began with a talking hippo. I thought she was lovely.
She was lovely. Very polite, very, very mild mannered.
Yes, I respected that she had like little file cards, for to go over her rules,
Oh, I don't have a card on that.
That's right. Tower Rat, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I thought this was really fun. A fun inclusion here. We got again the slightest nods to the greater MCU in this show. I did like when she mentioned the ancestral plane is just gorgeous. The ancestral plane is from Black Panther. It is the gorgeous place that we saw, which had a similar look, this sort of purple, as we've talked about. They love that. Yeah, the purple hue here. But this was a cool visual too. I thought the boats on the sand. What do you think of all this trippiness?
Yeah, very cool. Again, we mentioned purple. It reminded, we've talked about purple in connection with this series and the wider MCU earlier on as on these shows. Interesting it's used here again in this realm. Duat, is that how you pronounce it? I think the realm.
I think so. Yeah.
Duat. This was really inventive, though. Although I've just said purple, it has been used before, but the whole look of this I thought was really imaginative, and the fight with the kind of zombies.
I put sand zombies in my notes. So.
Yeah, they were sand zombies in The Walking Dead, and they were a bit different to this. But and then calling them untethered souls made me think of Us as well. But
yeah.
And these were the souls of the guys that Mark had killed as Konchu, weren't they? That he'd seen in the cafe.
I think so. I was trying to look at that too. I thought that was a great creepy moment. I mean, I think Stephen even maybe uses the word creepy, but that cafe filled with them all sitting at the tables.
Yes,
was very effective. And then I did think, the sand zombie attack, the fact that when you destroyed them, they went back into sand. Oh, look, see, that's a nice creepy cafe there.
There we go.
Jumping into the AMA for a second, I do see that we just mentioned this a little bit, but how Brent Drahir mentions they did connect to Black Panther a bit when Taweret confirmed the existence of multiple afterlives, including the ancestral plane. It was nice to have the ancestral plane specifically name dropped again in a show that is very, very specific about when it gets any MCU references. But also I think it was just fun because there's Valhalla, there is multiple afterlives, as we've seen. Just like there are multiple gods. And I have no idea. I think, again, will Thor, Love and Thunder have maybe a little bit of tie here with a character who's called the God Butcher?
Yeah.
If Gore hurts that hippo, Kim.
Oh no, we riot.
That's right. That is unacceptable.
Definitely. Rhinoceros. Was it a rhinoceros?
I think that's what Dr. Harrow called it. Yeah. Also interesting here is that when we saw his origin fully. Let's talk a bit more about that. How he became Moon Knight. Like I mentioned, the only time we saw him in the costume in these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. They name drop. They made the decision not to say. Now he calls Mark says Bushman like a name, and traditionally in the comics he was Bushman, and then later on they said he was his last name. It's the Spider-Man friends bit, I guess, all over again. I'm fine with them not showing him. It feels like something they keep in their pocket for a potential season 2, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was enough. It was enough to name him. Definitely. I can you see them introducing any more characters in the next episode?
I don't see how they can.
No, they've got a lot to type because obviously we never got any resolution this episode to that shaking sarcophagus. We all thought Jake Lockley was in there, but it feels a little bit of a stretch to bring him in the final episode.
Jake, so that whole idea that there's a third personality and that we assume he's probably going to be named Jake because in the comics, I think that is very purposely layered in. Like, yeah, like that sarcophagus wasn't there for no reason. And I don't even think it was a coincidence that the taxi, the prominent taxi in the background in his traumatic flashback to when he couldn't deal with his mom's death on the street. And it turned, I thought, is that Jake? When they first are looking through the different asylum doors, it wasn't Jake, but I think I could see the finale sprinkling in, maybe that other person. Also, Jake.
In this episode, I don't know if you thought the same, but when, they were set the mission to balance their soul, I thought, okay, well, they need to find the third personality then. Is that what the task actually is? And they'd go in and they'd find Jake, but no, it was that they had to be honest with one another.
Right. I want to talk about a little bit more about that ending in a second, but with the origin, I liked it a lot. I liked visually they pulled a lot from the comics as far as when the statue of Konchu. It was actually even really cool because Konchu used to be drawn one way in the comics. And it was only in recent years the big kind of beak look came in. And when he's first under the statue, you can't see the beak. And I think is very purposeful. They make him look like they used to make Konchu look. And then they kind of show, oh no, he's more what we've been seeing on this show. But I thought that was cool. Like you said, it's like I liked that we see that Konchu was definitely kind of pushing and prodding here, right?
Yes.
He was saying and making it very like, we're just gonna get the bad guys,
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem as though Mark actually died in this sequence and was resurrected. It feels like he saved him from dying. He was about to die maybe, and then Konchu. I know obviously he points the gun at his head or is under his chin as if to finish himself off, but I assume he was dying anyway. But yeah, and in the comics, it's clear that he actually died, isn't it, before he was resurrected?
I think so. I definitely think here it's what you said. I think it's that he was on death's door, but Konchu saved him. I think it would probably be a hat on a hat or a death on a death to show him already having been literally resurrected in an episode about him trying to resurrect himself. So I think it was the save. But let's talk about the ending. First, what we mentioned a little bit, but that reveal that on the street that he went to his mom's shiva. Well, he didn't go inside, couldn't face it. And that's where the bleeding over of Mark and Steven really began. And I think we got enough of an answer. We kept mentioning like, who is he talking to on the phone? I think it doesn't matter if he was calling some store or just nobody, that the mom is dead and Steven had just was telling himself whatever was on the other side of that phone. Maybe it was an automated line. Did you need anything more specific, or was that enough for you?
No, he does say to Dr. Harrow that when he calls her, well, she screens her calls, she won't answer. So there was kind of a little bit of another explanation there as well. Maybe he is just talking to voicemail when he was on the phone, or just imagining, because this is a guy whose mind is broken. So
Definitely.
Mm.
And yeah, I thought this was such a heartbreaking scene here, this on the street,
Yeah.
and really getting to the root of it all. Again, it's like, it's interesting. I think the only, my concern with the final episode is almost like having to weave back into sort of the bigger, superhero story, because right now it's been such an interesting like exploration of this guy's fractured mind
Mm.
and it is funny that so many of these shows have been kind of about like trauma, but this one I think is stands out because we never knew him before. So it's
Mm.
just like this, yeah, like there is a version they wouldn't make for Marvel Studios, but the version of the show that has nothing to do with Moon Knight, it's just like about a guy with different personalities and why that is. But
Mm.
again, I think it works. Like I'm into it.
Mm.
What they're doing here with it. But then let's talk. We talked about the fight on the boat, but of course, the ultimate resolution of that is Steven being lost here. First of all, Kim, do you think this is it for Steven? But either way, I thought this was very, very effective. A lot of people made comparisons to seeing Anna freeze at the end of Frozen, which I remember making kids absolutely bawl in the theater, even though she got better in a couple minutes. But what did you think of possibly losing our lovely accented Steven here?
Oh, this really got me. It was one of those moments where I was like, no. And I felt immediately kind of disappointed that this could be the end of Steven, and it could be because, in some ways it would make sense for Mark's arc for that character to be gone. And of course, we saw the scales balance after he froze in the sand, implying that he's now got a full heart, he's now a full person. But at the same time, are they two souls or are they one soul? And if Mark leaves the field of reeds and goes to stop Harrow, will Steven come with him in some way? So
right. I'm of two minds, much like Mark and Steven, about it, because on one hand, I do think like it was very effective, and I'm always like hesitant to have something undone so quickly. Even though I'm not saying never bring Steven back ever, but maybe like keep him out of the finale. Maybe that's how you bring in Jake almost. It's like, I guess I'm just one person now. And then it's like, oh, there's this other personality. And maybe that is what they do, by the way, I think. But yeah, this was very effective, especially in the, I'm a sucker for you get what you wanted through the terrible sacrifice thing. So like the fact that, that balances the scales, and he goes to basically paradise, to the fields of reed, only by having to lose this other side of him that we as an audience love, but also that is a part of him, and that they have this, they're literally each other, but also they've come to like care about each other, has their own sort of distinct personalities. It's complicated. But yeah, I thought this worked really, really well here, and it was interesting. I was surprised. I thought if any episode was going to have a mid-credit scene, to be this one, just because we ended on such a somber note. But it's like there's still a lot in play. But at the same time, I can see why they just wanted to sit with our sadness at the end here,
which I am doing very much. That field of reeds, I half expected Superman and Lois to turn up from that Justice League scene.
There's some little bit of Smallville. Visit the field of reeds. By the way, I did the debate that always has to happen with these shows once we're past screeners is, do I stay up to watch at midnight? And ultimately my wife and I did watch this at midnight, and then we were sad at 1 a.m.
Oh no, how could you sleep after that?
I know, right? Let's see. Let's do a little bit more here from the chat. George Fotis, I'm not going to say your last name right. It's George. I'm sorry. Dramasoyotas? George. Let's go with that.
Oh, I like that. Even if it's wrong.
I believe the show needs to be a little more episodes. 6 episodes for it is too little. I mean, I can't say that with certainty because I haven't seen it, but I do, as much as I love this episode, I am like, ooh, there's some heavy lifting, considering he has to still get back into the real world. He's in the field of reeds. Now he has to get back to the real world, get Konchu back, become the Moon Knight again, stop Harrow. What do you think, Kim? Are you worried about how much heavy lifting they have to do in one episode?
No, I'm looking forward to the heavy lifting in one episode. It's going to be a fun-packed episode. But I get what George is saying. It does kind of feel like, also, I want to be with these characters for longer. I've really enjoyed the three main actors in this series and their characters and what they're bringing to it. So I would like it to be longer.
Yeah, same here. I just like to spend time with them. Kind of a follow-up to what we were just talking about. Langley M. Neely says, I think the PR of this is it, only these 6 episodes because Isaac is not signed for more is stunt. They obviously have plans for him, whether signed for more or not. What do you think?
I think it was probably Oscar Isaac wanting to not be tethered to it. He's a very versatile actor. He likes doing, lots of different work. I don't think it was a stunt, but, it could be.
I don't think it's a stunt either. I think it's literally true. He only signed to do this. I don't think they're lying about that. Of course, Marvel Studios wants to do more. And I think he probably will do more. I just think it'll be more selective. Like they'll have to be very, because A, they'll have to pay him a lot of money, but B, like you said, he is a busy guy. I don't think he wanted to be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing all the time for the next few years. So they'll work it out. I feel like, honestly, I feel similar to how I feel about Tom Holland right now, who continued to say through everything he did for press and even on like the Blu-ray extras for Spider-Man No Way Home, if this is the end for me. And contractually, it is the end for him, but I am 99% sure that they'll pay him a lot of money and he'll come back. Clearly, Oscar Isaac is not coming off of years of playing the character like Tom Holland. But yeah, I think,
Also, I think, Moon Knight is an untested venture for Disney, and I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to see how it goes. It's not a guarantee that it was going to be successful, I suppose. So
right, yeah, no, it's like, I mean, it really is built around Oscar Isaac because there's no overt connections to the rest of the MCU, because it's a character that mainstream audiences won't know going in. They really, I think, treated it like, hey, we have Oscar Isaac, so let's do something cool with him. And I think that was the right approach, honestly, rather than immerse it in like MCU trappings. Let's see. There's a couple questions here about Jake, or comments about Jake. So Langley says, so far, I think he puts in quotes, Jake, third personality, because we don't know for sure that's going to be the name, but probably will be, has been around affecting things, the steak dinner date, the fish, etc. While Simon Smith says, I don't think Jake is going to show up this season, more that he's been being cooked, another word, cooked in Mark's subconsciousness. I think both can be right. I think, that's where I keep thinking is like, Jake's already been there, and maybe we're going to get a little more direct nod to him in the final episode without it being like Oscar Isaac playing Jake for a bunch of screen time. What do you think of those two differing but not comments?
Yeah, I think probably that there's going to be some kind of a blend. As you pointed out, we've had various subtle and less subtle nods to him throughout the series. Maybe we'll get another one, but maybe they are leaving it open to explore him further down the line. Throwing everything at this first series is probably a bad idea. So
yeah,
that would make sense.
One more Jake connected one, but a little different tangent, which is Luis Valenzuela saying, to be honest, I thought there would be a post-credit scene where Jake Lockley shows up. The other shows did a post-credit scene by now, which is true. All the other live action shows had done at least one post-credit scene by the penultimate episode. Did you expect one, Jake, or not?
I didn't. I mean, obviously checked, but I didn't expect one. It doesn't feel like the kind of show that should have them to me. And they've obviously felt the same. There may be one after the final episode.
Yeah, I thought there might be one with Harrow, like real world Harrow. But I also didn't feel she did not getting one. And again, I think it does speak to the kind of show it is. that like I was thinking back to, okay, yeah, we've gotten post-credit scenes by now, and they were like, they've got the Vision's original body and like these big things that were very like, oh, cool, like MCU stuff. And this show, because it's not leaning on that, it just doesn't feel like, that they needed that. That being said, it would be very, very unlike them to not have anything in the finale. So it probably won't be with Oscar Isaac, though. That's my guess, right?
Yeah.
They should just show the Rogers the musical song again in full. That's like a big middle finger.
No, if they show the same sequence, but then they pan over and for no reason there's a guy dressed as Moon Knight during the Battle of New York.
Right. Doing a British accent and everything.
And then just it's like question mark appears and like, is it the Riddler? Anything can happen. One more from Langley and Neely. My theory is the next time we see him is the Werewolf by Night Halloween special. I know that's been, a lot of people have wondered about that. The characters are very connected in the comics because Moon Knight first appeared in Werewolf by Night. Maybe, again, I don't think there was any lie that Oscar Isaac only signed to do this show. That doesn't mean he couldn't have agreed to something else by now. I don't know if we see him in that special, though. I think it's gonna be a little longer wait. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, I think so. If it's true that he hadn't signed on to play him again, I think it will be a while longer. Yeah, I don't think we'll see him then.
It's worth noting that this show is probably pretty cleverly scheduled, because I'm forgetting the exact cutoff for like the Emmy to be eligible for the Emmys for this year, which the Emmys are in like September, and I think it's around June is the cutoff. So it was smart that this show is airing like now in the spring with this very lauded performance at the center. We don't know for sure if he'll get a nomination, but it feels like, again, I'm just speaking more to the fact that I feel like Oscar Isaac will probably agree to do more. It just, we might have to have some patience, for him. Any predictions as we go into the finale next week?
Predictions. I predict that there will be some kind of tete-a-tete with Osiris, who might facilitate his return to life. That's what I'm going to say. We saw his gates, didn't we?
We did
in this episode. But and he's a god of resurrection as well as of the afterlife. And although we know kind of in Egyptian law, Taweret is a god of rebirth, children. I think the only things that were mentioned in this series have been that she's the god of mothers, women and children. Is that right? I think they said that
something
today.
Like that.
Yeah. So I don't know if she'll fulfill that resurrection role, and she did mention that the Osiris was the way. So
my two main things, I think, one we talked about a bunch, which is like Jake will be subtly part of the finale. I don't think he's going to be a big part, but I think like whether it's a little nod or something at the very end about this other personality maybe coming to the forefront. And then I just feel like something big will happen with Layla, probably, who really hasn't been in the past two episodes. I mean, the actress was in last week's, but it wasn't the real Layla, and she wasn't in this week's. I think the whole thing with Konchu wanting her to be the next Moon Knight, I don't think she necessarily becomes the next Moon Knight, but I think maybe we see her path. I can see a post-credit scene focused on her and something she's doing next, like some sort of mission she's on, whether she's in a Moon Knight costume, which I think is unlikely, or just maybe sent on her own journey. I think Layla will kind of get a more clear path because it would be very Marvel, like we don't see Oscar Isaac for a couple years, but we see her, right? It's like she can show up in something else.
Yeah, I back that theory.
Right. All right, guys, thanks for joining us for the penultimate Moon Knight chat. We'll be back next week to talk about the finale. We'll have plenty more in between then. So keep looking for stuff here at Fandom. Take care.